Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Chris Hill, my co-host Sean Winter. Today we have special guest, Mr. Stephen Kellogg, singer and songwriter from here in the United States. Sean, how's it going, buddy?
It's going great, Chris. Great weather here. Feeling good, excited. How about you?
Things are fantastic. Yeah, I'm super pumped to link up with Stephen. I've been a fan for going on a decade now of his music, of his work, of really everything he's about. And we'll get a little bit of a bio, but first, I've been pretty good with these jokes lately, so I'm going to try another one here today. What do you say?
All right. Let's hear what you got.
How many musicians does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
Oh, come on. You got this, man. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3.
That's
what do you think, man?
That's so stupid. It's funny.
That's what my girlfriend says. It's so stupid, it's funny.
Yeah, that one caught me off guard. I'm not going to lie. Chris, when doing research for the show, I listened to Steven's TED Talk about job satisfaction, and he played a song afterwards, and I like what he stands for. He seems like a very authentic dude, means well, wants to spread great ideas and just do good in the world. So I'm very excited to talk with him.
Absolutely, man. Stephen Kellogg, he's an American singer-songwriter who had a band called Stephen Kellogg and the Sixers for about 10 years. A few years ago, they kind of broke up, went their own ways, and started doing his own thing with some different bands. He actually recently, in 2016, launched his most recent album, which is SouthWestNorthEast, which he recorded and produced in 4 different parts of the country. But before that, he has released albums with 4 of the major record labels, has been around the block, and has done over 1,600 shows all throughout the United States, overseas, and does a lot of support with the U.S. troops and with charities around the world too. So I'm excited to connect with him again. He's a great guy, and I really just look forward to hearing what he has to say. So with that, wait till we jump in.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Stephen Kellogg, thank you so much for joining us. How's it going, buddy?
It's going well. It's going well, man. How are you?
Things are great. I'm here with Sean. We know you're out west, so thank you for taking some time to get up early and join us.
Hey, it's my pleasure, man. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan of what you do. I love your Instagram. I have appreciated your enthusiasm for my stuff. So it's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, I think you and I talked about last time, and we can dive into this story later, but the very first Showgirls that I saw was quoted by you as one of the least successful shows that you had ever put on. It was that Halloween show back in Atlanta in 2007 or 8, I think it was. But I know your background. Could you give everybody else a little bit of a taste of Stephen Kellogg? What you've been up to the last 15, 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, probably. It's probably been 16 or 17 years since I had a proper job. I play music and I speak and write and travel and try to spread ideas that have worked for me, that feel right. And the show you're talking about, I remember well because it still ranks as one of the biggest, worst show. I mean, I've played about 1,600 shows probably in the last 12 years, and it's that's got to be one of the 5 worst. I would say that Atlanta show. So, heyo. And
now, Stephen, what started you on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Chris, maybe you feel a certain way about cooking and food, but for me, I've never felt that I really had a choice in this. I mean, I when I look back, it was sort of like it was always going to happen. My sister took me to see Whitesnake, and I just, the excitement of seeing that show at 10 and Bon Jovi and all these bands and just thinking that looked like a fun job. And then you kind of couple that with my dad every day. As soon as he'd get home from work, he'd put on records, Crosby, Stills and Nash and Jackson Brown. And you could tell that was like his therapy, And these two kind of this cross section, it was sort of, it sent me down the road pretty early that this would be a cool thing to do. And what's wild is that I didn't start doing it till kind of later. I mean, I started really late. Only, it wasn't until college that I really dove in a meaningful way and kind of started tinkering with the idea of actually like making it a living. But I don't think I could really do anything other than what I've been doing for and I'm 40 now, so it's just kind of how it goes, I think.
When did you actually start playing?
I mean, I played a little guitar in high school, but just enough to write. I mean, for me, the thing I'm most passionate about is the words and the ideas. So, and that probably started. I have found notebooks from at least from junior high, not earlier, where I'm filling it up with words and songs and little phrases and things. So that's always been a pretty natural thing from probably 10 years old on.
I gotcha. Have you ever thought about going the Josh Ritter route and writing a book?
Yeah, I'm working on one right now. It is. I always think of Andy Rooney. There's this great Andy Rooney quote where he's like, "Why does everybody think they could write a book if only they had the time?" And it's so true. I mean, I have been taking swings at it for years, and I'm trying to bear down and I'm about 150 pages in on this idea right now. But I very much would like that. I'd like to write something in the prose way there.
Now, Stephen, some of our listeners are very creative individuals, right? And they're working to try and find their place, their unique voice, their unique style. As you were trying to find your place or your style, what were some of the struggles that you went through in that journey?
That's a good question, Sean. I think it can be so tricky for all of us in whatever we're doing to kind of find our unique voice, and so my road has been you try on different hats. You see how something feels. Sometimes that's the only way that that's not for you, and I did put records out on 4 of the major record labels, and obviously that has those folks have an opinion when it comes to music. They're paying for your records to be made, and they want them to do certain things, and so you find yourself trying things out, and I'm sure there's a few artists out there who are just made of integrity and never waver or whatever, but I've never met them. Like I think for most of us, you just trial and error your way through, and you go, oh man, I took a swing and at this thing, and it didn't quite feel right, or it didn't stick, and when you've hit on what is you've hit on what is working, because it's easy is the wrong adjective, but it's like you start to just feel a groove to it. You go, this is work, but this is work that I really have a vision for, and that's when you start to uncover authentic pieces of yourself, and that looks different in every career and profession, but in mine that maybe means like, okay, we took a swing at being writing a sexy poppy song, and we felt like foolish, so we're gonna not do that again. Now we're good on that for now, and then you move on to the next thing and try on being the total folk guy for a minute, and that doesn't seem to really feel right, and you just kind of go through until you get a sense of who you are.
I can tell you that's definitely been a place that I've been. Actually, even recently, I have an agent for this next book that I'm writing, and we put this big proposal together, 50 pages or whatever, and the agent wants it to be a certain way because they know that the publishers want it a certain way. And as I look back over my writing, I'm like, that's not really me as much as, if I were just writing it for my audience. So I can definitely see the challenges there.
Yeah, that's right. That totally makes sense, man. And the thing about it too, Chris, is like, when you try something out and it's not right and it doesn't work, you're kind of left with nothing. Mm-hmm. So the one thing I sort of have learned the hard way is that you should try to get as close to your thing as possible, because if nothing else, if it doesn't fly, it's not sticky, if it doesn't seem to connect with a lot of people, at least you're left with something that you can relate to and you can feel personally satisfied about. And I've felt the opposite, when you take a swing and then it doesn't work, and that's a lonely place to be. It's something I I would love to never be there again. Not sure that's realistic, but it's, so I think getting your voice in there is so essential,
Yeah, for sure. It reminds me of Neil Gaiman. He was giving a commencement address to some school, I believe in Philadelphia, but he was talking about, doing it for the work for the right reasons. It's basically saying, one time I was supposed to get paid all this money up front for doing this work, and this was supposed to be like, and then I wouldn't actually ever end up being paid at all. So at the end of the day, I didn't have the work that I was proud of, nor did I get paid for it. So my lesson was, if I do the work that I'm proud of, at least I'll have the work.
That's right. And Neil's, he's great. I think I've seen that talk, and it's super inspiring and right on the money,
Absolutely. Well, so for you, Stephen, when did you know for sure? Like, I know you in your TEDx talk, you talk about, the early gigs, the steakhouse, they're going to be nice and feed you, low paying, but then obviously the career transition. At what point did you know that this is my career?
Well, it's almost like I don't know. I still wake up most days and I'm like, okay, is this happening? Am I still doing this? Like, is this a go? I mean, I don't know. I don't know that there's some moment where you go, we did it. We made it over the hill and we'll never turn back because we know we're good enough. Right. I mean, I feel like you're always creatives are always going to be up against a measure of self-doubt. I suppose that there maybe is some massive amount of money that makes you go, I guess this is what I'm going to keep doing. But I don't know. I know some millionaires who are still like, well, I guess that's it. I guess I don't know if I'm going to make any more music. And I'm just like, are you kidding? Really? Obviously there's a mandate, for it. And, but so it's, I don't know, I mean, I really don't. I had been doing it for 10 years and signed a lot of record deals and had some, reasonably modest, but legitimate successes, and still found myself, constantly discussing other potential careers for myself. So, I mean, and I haven't really been thinking about it lately, but I sometimes think I should be, so it's really a long-winded way of saying I don't know the answer to that question.
I won't name any names, but it's interesting to hear you say that, because I have the opportunity to talk with some people that are, in my eyes, and a lot of the readership for Entrepreneurial Chef Magazine, in their eyes, are some of the most successful people in the culinary industry. And yet I've had conversations with some of these same people, again, I won't name names, who say, Sean, I'm still trying to figure it out. And I sit back and think, you have like a multi-million-dollar brand built. How are you still trying to figure it out? So it's interesting, because I think that is true for a lot of creatives, is that you are measuring your self-worth. You've got your doubt. You've got what other people expect of you, what you expect of yourself. And there's just this massive mixture. And because you're a creative, you can conjure up some really great stories. And I think it sometimes puts people in a little bit of a downward spiral. Would you agree?
I would. I mean, you get to, sometimes I'm really thankful for my wife. Sometimes she's the one that's like, don't talk crazy, like, you're going to be okay. You're going to do something. Ideas will come, opportunities will arise, and so I think it's one of the things we got to muscle through as creatives. And, there's financial realities that you're always trying to meet. And that, at least in some of these industries, has become difficult to monetize. I sort of envy the food industry, because I don't think there's any way to digitize that experience. Like if you can, like, Chris, you're always going to have a job if you want it, like, I just like, that is one of the most, eating is one of the most primal joys in the world. And I just sort of like, wow, that feel, which is not to like reduce, the challenges I'm sure you face, but man, that is job security. Like food is something that no matter how low or dejected I feel, like food is always there, like as a ready to do it,
Talking about the pizza man showing up at your house, right? Appreciating the happiness you bring somebody.
Man, I love that guy. He's not there anymore. There's a kind of turnover in delivery guys, but and what? Yeah, I mean, it really was like that's pure joy when he shows up from Julian's with his stuff every Friday. Love it.
Stephen, were there times when you were talking about monetizing your talents and, from a financial standpoint, making sure that you're able to continue what you're doing?
Yeah.
Were there some very tough business or entrepreneurial type lessons that you've learned being a creative along the way that when you look back now, perhaps you wish you knew them ahead of time, but when you look back now, you can pinpoint and say, you know what, I really have learned that I need that X, Y, and Z I need to do or stay on top of or manage. What are some of those things?
Well, okay. So, the biggest and best thing that has kept me going is that if you do the work, if you take care of your work will take care of you. So, you got a lot of folks running around trying to think about hiring companies to get more Instagram followers or Twitter followers, or, they're just putting the cart before the horse in a big way. It's like promoting the music before they've written music that's worth promoting. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that I think is just you can't beat that particular piece of advice. And I wish that there are many times where I remember that and go, okay, you know what I need to do right now? I need to ignore all this and I need to go write something worth being excited about. So that's a good one. In the entrepreneurship end of things, I'm not sure I'm the best guy at that because I've made a living, but I'm not sure I have the best business sense. It's not a disaster, but I am, I'm learning. I have a lot to learn about that. And I still struggle with the self-worth of just like, of asking, you need money to do this, like to keep it going. You got to feed the beast, but it's very hard when it's your art, to kind of to acknowledge that, and you feel like is this okay that I'm taking money from people and stuff? And obviously, I know it is. Intellectually, you can tell me, Stephen, you're crazy. Obviously, it is. But I think that is something that a lot of us struggle with, and I'm no different there.
I just want to say one quote really quick, and Chris, you can take it. But I either heard or read this recently. I know what it was. It was a personal chef. So the personal chef said, "Here's my price," and they said, "Well, there's other personal chefs that charge less." And that personal chef said, "Well, there's other clients that pay more." And I thought, that's brilliant. I love it. It's applicable to a lot of creative people too. It's a different way of thinking.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that reminds me too of, there's a story of Picasso's on a train somewhere, and some lady sees him, recognizes him, and says, "Will you, do a quick drawing of me?" He draws it. It takes about 30 seconds or a minute. She asks him if she can have it, and he says, "Well, that'll be $500 or $5,000." And she says, "What are you talking about? That only took you 30 seconds." He said, "No, it took me 40 years."
Yeah, I know. I mean, I love that story, and there's something. I mean, and I envy his his like confidence and bravado.
Yeah.
That takes some balls, but I am not that guy, that's for sure. But it's a great story.
Well, Stephen, what I was talking with Sean before you hopped on about, which is one of the things why I think people really appreciate your work. I mean, obviously it's good tunes, a good vibe to it, good energy, but also the fact that you're vulnerable in your writing. You put yourself out there. You show that like you're a family man. You have your 4 daughters and your wife, and it's not just about the music, and it's not just about lyrics in a song, but it's really about you're a full like, kind of whole person. I mean, I think that's the part that, because you can hear a good song anywhere. You can hear it on the radio. You can find it on YouTube. But then finding somebody to connect with is a whole different story.
Yeah, and I think that's when we talked earlier about finding who you are and what you do, and that's one of the things that does come very naturally to me. I enjoy sharing even the hard experiences, even the embarrassing experiences. I like sharing that with people. I like the exchange of energy on that, and you hope that you're, by sharing the real guts of a story, that it'll be helpful to someone, and I found that to really be my thing. I can't get away from it. I always worry, like, is this too specific? Is this not going to work? And sometimes the more specific it is, the more it seems to resonate with folks. So that I didn't always know that, but that is one of the things that I aim at when I'm putting my stuff in the world.
Stephen, your TED Talk, it's about job satisfaction, and you talk about a couple of different strategies. One of them was knowing your why, and it's important. There's a lot of people that talk about that, but for you, how do you ensure that you keep this present every day and that this is something that's driving you?
Well, so here's the thing: we're all going to have some work, right? That is not, no matter how good your job is. The thing is, when you know why you're doing it, you can get through those experiences with a bit of grace, because you can dive in. So when I'm doing a show, sometimes I'm asked to do private events, and a lot of times those are the things that end up really helping me make my mortgage payments and stuff, and you go and you'll do it, and you'll be playing to a load of people who don't, you can have some really rocky shows like that sometimes, where people are not focused and it's a lot of work, but when if nothing else, this is going to help keep a roof over my family's head, it is so much easier to keep a very positive attitude, to stay very focused, and to not in any way resent the people who've brought you in but maybe aren't really paying attention. There's a big bank that paid me the most money I've ever been paid for anything. And the president of the bank got up and he said, "Everybody, this is my favorite songwriter. He's going to play for us now for the next hour." And I am not kidding you when I say that by the time I got to the first chorus, there was not one person in a hall of 300 people who was even facing the stage. And I went on like that for an hour. I mean, that is a very humbling experience. And right after that, Aaron Neville got up and played a show, and it was the same exact thing. Nobody paid attention. Not one. They didn't even watch for the hits. But yeah, I mean, and that was such an education, because Aaron Neville, he got up there and he enjoyed the music. He got inside the music, because his why is, I'm doing this because I love to play music and I love to sing songs. And in that case, I'm doing this because by taking this gig, it allows me to take some other gigs that I might not, be able to afford to take if I didn't have this. So you can be joyful in that moment, even when you're being disrespected in a way. That you're being respected elsewhere. You can find, it's really. I just really try to seek that out in every situation. What's the good aspect of this? What am I learning from this? What can I glean from this situation that's going to be positive in my life? And so it really, really keeps me going, because there's such a variety to the different things we're asked to do in music, and so it really helps make it an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and I think also it's how does this situation or this circumstance I'm in right now, how does it serve the greater mission of what I'm trying to do, whether it's to help pay the mortgage, or maybe it's help provide some insight for something that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise, whatever it might be. And that also, I think, helps you kind of tie back into another lesson from your TED Talk, which is talk about being on the right ladder, being at the bottom of the ladder you want to climb versus at the top of one you don't. Speak on that for a minute.
Yeah, well, and just to be clear, I did steal that from The Office. That's the original Ricky Gervais Office, which I have said. I say that in the TED Talk. I got this from The Office, and yet I have been quoted by everybody. I get quoted as having had that quote online all the time. I saw Daughtry posted it, and he credited me for it. I'm like, oh man. didn't take this quote. It's better to be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than the middle of one that you don't, or the top of one that you don't. And, that's just the idea of it's never too late. It's never too early. You really have to say, is this where I want to go? And that's what you want to pursue. That's one way to stay fulfilled, no doubt, is just making sure that what you're pursuing is something that you actually want to pursue. And if you have to, eat a bit of humble pie and go back to the beginning of it, then so be it, and I'm a big believer in that for sure.
Now, how does somebody know when they're on that wrong ladder? I know that's a wide question, but
yeah, I think it's just discontent, it's like, it's learning to know the difference between a little bit of just, I had a bad day at work versus like a fundamental absence, if you dread, working every day, if it's like, if you just can't even, that's not a good thing. And, I also think, and on the self-awareness scale, listen to the way you talk about your job. When someone says, what do you do? You can learn a lot from the way you describe your work, and if you find yourself justifying it, like, well, I do this because it has this and it does this, but really I love that. That's a pretty much a giant red flag of like, okay, well, is there a way to do the thing that you really love? Is there a way to move towards that? How could you get there? And entertaining that. And I have a saying that I use as kind of a mantra, which is the truth is never a bad idea. And that includes the truth that you tell yourself, how do I really feel about the work?
That's a great gauge.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be shocking and alarming when you're like, oh, the truth is ugly, but it's always good. It's always a good thing.
When I have a lot of people that reach out to me that are at the bottom of the ladder, and I think a lot of times when you're at the bottom, you need to be really, like you said, self-aware and clear with, okay, am I at the bottom at the right ladder, or am I on the wrong ladder? Because I think sometimes people think, oh man, I have to do like the shit work. I have to do all this stuff that's not fun, but that's part of actually working your way up the ladder at the same time.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example of a situation where we did this kind of recently, but, so I had a band for 10 years, same band, great guys. And we parted ways, went on hiatus in 2012. So I was continuing on. And I really stumbled. I didn't put great bands together. I had a couple of rough shows. My numbers went way down. It just felt like, oh man, things are not quite right. And so I met with my manager and we had a conversation, and she said, well, what do you want to do? If you could start at the beginning, what would you do? And I said, I'd play really small rooms, see if we could fill them. And I would focus the show just on the songs, not so much of the hijinks and the craziness, and she said, well, then let's do that. And I was like, but what if the people who are already with us, who have remained with us, what if they don't like it? What if this doesn't go well? And she said, then it doesn't go well, but let's try to view this as an opportunity to build what you always wanted to build, the way you want to build it. And we went out, and this has a happy ending because basically we went out and did a tour, and like an acoustic tour of just the songs and the stories, nothing else, no fanfare, no fancy stage setups, not even a big band. We went out and we did that, and we sold out like 17 shows in 20 days. And they were small places, but it was so fulfilling, and it really set the tone for what's become the last 3 years. It just set me back. It reset me. And, I was playing in some places, way smaller places than I played, but the feeling of like, hey, it's okay to start again. It's okay to fall, that's all right. Part of the gig, it was incredible. It was very, very, very helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to say too, that like, I know like, the first show that I went to of yours back in 07 or 08, whenever it was, I had never heard of you before. Somebody actually bought the tickets for me for, as a birthday present. And, I went and loved it. And that was when you came into the audience and you had a great time. The audience was loving it. But I'll never forget the one song that you've played at all the shows I've been to so far, but it's Big Easy, which is you have this, and Sean, you've never been to a show before, but there's this certain, I don't know, dance. What would you call it, Stephen?
Yeah, it's a dance routine. It's a thing. Yeah.
I mean, it has to feel pretty awesome to have like the whole audience know the dance that goes with this song, which means, when you're filling up this room of 300, 500, however many people, like the people that are there want to be there because of you.
Yeah, I mean that's a good thing when it goes down like that. It's wonderful, and it's always the goal. And if the audience, more and more I'm realizing it's the audience whatever they're willing to like let you in on. That's how the better the more they're in it, the more you can give them the great stuff. It's like it really it's a pact between the audience and the performer. But the Big Easy still remains. That dance still does remain. It's good. We did it 2 nights ago in Los Angeles, so it's part of the fabric.
And Stephen, back on your TED Talk, so you talk about the grass is greener syndrome that a lot of people go through. I mean, I've struggled with that at points as well. Can you talk just a little bit about that and some of your thoughts to help individuals really cope with that?
Well, yeah, I mean that's such it's such a cliche, but I feel like cliches are cliches for a reason, and usually it's because there is a deep fundamental truth. And our ability, the American especially ability to view what everybody else has as more desirable is just staggering. I mean, the amount of people I know who really do have it all, whether they realize it or not, and long and pine for other things is big. So I don't think that's a problem in and of itself. I think you just have to know, hey, am I looking at this situation and really romanticizing what it's like for the other side, this thing that I'm coveting, and just, I mean, it all comes down to a degree of self-awareness, and I mean, I'm famous for it. I have one of the best family lives of anybody I know. I mean, my wife is just, she's a blast. Kids are great. And I'm not saying this in a braggy way, but it's like I have that. And there are times where I sit around just coveting other people's lives. And these are like people, they're artists. I'm coveting their professional victories and the songs they've written. And one day I'm with one of my best friends who's a pretty famous person, so I'm not going to say who it is, but and he's like, dude, you have the best family in the world. I'm divorced. My life is like a mess. Like, don't pine for this, like what you have, I would trade up even for you any day. And it's like, he's right. I mean, it's crazy how we do this, so I think just knowing that that's human nature and being aware of it is helpful in trying to be satisfied with your work.
That's such a good point. People look at that void. I have a close friend of mine that when he was giving relationship advice to me at one point, and he said, Sean, the problem with people is that they may have 80% of what they ultimately want, but they're constantly looking for that 20. And then they find that 20 in somebody else. And then they realize that somebody else only has now 50% of what you ultimately want. And now you're down. So it's one of those things that a lot of people, I know myself included, sometimes fall into the trap of looking at that void and not really looking at what's there.
Absolutely, man. I mean, gosh, that's relationship advice we could all use, just like focus on that 80 and accentuate and maybe consider accepting the 20 as like, hey, this is great because this makes you. So it's fine, Well,
and I know for me, I've found myself, sometimes chasing the wrong things, like the TV stuff or the more popularity, or trying to disguise the fact that I had a beautiful, wonderful girlfriend because I wanted to be attractive to the ladies, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's important to also kind of back up and say what's the game that I'm playing, and not try and gauge the score of what you're playing against someone else's.
Yeah, no, I mean, right, that story, you always win the games you play at or something. Yeah, I know there's a great, yeah. Absolutely.
So, Stephen, one of the last things that you talk about on the TED Talk was maintaining integrity and core values. For those creative individuals that are trying to monetize, I guess, how do you play that balancing act of wanting to stand for something, but not also feeling like you're selling out doing something else for maybe money.
Yeah, and and as I mentioned in the TED Talk, I mean, I've stumbled and gotten that wrong before, and just kind of like try something and go, "Whoa, that's terrible." But integrity isn't about being perfect. It's not about never failing. It's about having the courage when you realize you have screwed up to make it right to the best of your ability. That is what integrity is. So I think, for creatives and for everybody, if you know something is a bad move, don't do it. Just don't do it. Never do it. If you are not sure and you're inclined to do it and you do it and you realize it's a bad move, then, fix it, and don't, you can't beat yourself up forever about it. In my experience, once you genuinely go in and try to make things right, you have peace again. And that is a great commodity to be able to have, peace of mind. So, I think that, I think as long as you feel like something's kind of might work or might be okay and you're game to try it, and if you're not sure, then you try things and you just see what works and see. Yeah, I mean, we've all got to try to feed our families. So there's nothing wrong with, if you only want to cook using the highest ingredients, but you can actually like pay the bills by using slightly lesser ingredients, and you try it out and it's working great and everybody's thrilled and they're happy. I mean, I don't think you need to go to bed feeling bad that you haven't, I don't know. I'm trying to use food analogies because I know who I'm, but I guess those are my thoughts on that,
No, I think that's a great analogy. And that's one that I use with people all the time. Like cut the corners you can cut without compromising like who you are and what you believe.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you get to a place where you are crushing it and you don't need to cut those corners anymore, then don't. Then you can stop. You can take that back and you can be like, hey, now we get to just do this the perfect way. I mean, from going back to music, I don't always get the best recordings. I've put out recordings of songs where I know the song is much better than the recording I'm about to release. And part of me hates myself for like letting that stuff get out there, and those recordings that I think are like okay, but not as great as they could be. And the other part of me knows that I have to like go out on tour and I want to share this music, and I'm not sure when I'm going to make a better recording. And I just kind of decided to just let stuff fly, and that's become part of me. And there's a little bit of a rawness to a lot of what I get out in the world because I haven't taken the time to properly edit it or fix it or make it, right. And that's not always a great thing, but it's the reality of my life. Cause I gotta raise my kids. I gotta play shows. I can't, and I think one of the things I would do if I fell into a pile of money is I would probably try to bear down and be a little more disciplined about only letting some of the higher quality stuff get out there. But right now I'm not killing myself over that because I know I'm just doing the best I can,
Stephen, can you talk a little bit about the creative process? Obviously, last fall, September, I believe it was, SouthWestNorthEast came out. Can you talk a little bit about that? It was obviously a stray from the normal type of album where you're recording different parts of the album in different parts of the country with different people, and then what it looks like for you to bring an album or even maybe a song to life?
Sure. So this fed right into my lack of discipline for only putting the very best out there. But it was the concept for the record was SouthWestNorthEast. I recorded each part of the album in a different part of the country with a different co-producer and different groups of musicians. And I thought rather than have to pick a lane for this next thing, what I can do is I'll put my 5 kind of pop songs on East and put them with the producer that does that. I'll put my 5 kind of Southern rock songs on South, and we'll do it that way. I'll put my 5 kind of folk rock songs, cowboy songs on West, and then I'll do and then the indie rock stuff up on North. And So I went in the amazing part of it was I got to learn, 4 completely different ways of making records. And we did 5 songs for each section. And it was a really great learning experience. It's kind of an interesting concept, which I think has helped sell the record. And I'm grateful for that. And I released 20 songs at once, which is a big, that's a lot. But it's given me a lot to keep busy with this past year, out playing all these new songs and stuff. So that was that moment, and now I'm actually, these things go fast. So now I'm working on the new one now and trying to figure out what's next.
So what is the next step for you, Stephen? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bunch of touring, that I'm doing this minute, and I'm headed over. I'm doing a tour with the Navy in next month, and we'll go over and land on a aircraft carrier and play some glamorous shows and some not so glamorous shows. And just after that, I'll probably record another album, try to finish this book, and, the wheel turns.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us, man. What are some maybe kind of final thoughts? You maybe talk about like your legacy, what you want to leave behind with your music, and kind of what drives you.
Well, Chris, I think you and I, have bonded over similar worldviews of just, how to get through this experience with a bit of grace, and that's really all I'm trying to do. I mean, I pretty much write these songs and I share these ideas because with the hope that others who struggle in one way or another don't feel as alone. That we know that it's okay to be imperfect, that we hold up kindness as a high value and put some importance on it, which I think is particularly important right now, in this 2017, with the divisions that are existing in our country and around the world. I think, just keeping empathy and kindness at a high premium is so essential. So those are the kinds of ideas that I want to put in the world, and that's that's the legacy you hope to leave.
Absolutely, man. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for your time. The barbecue is coming up in June
16th and 17th in Connecticut. We do a whole VIP weekend, man. You should come up for that, man. The SK Family Barbecue. It's a lot of bonding. You should come up, Chris.
Dude, I've been trying to for years now. I might just go ahead and have a conversation with my girlfriend tonight.
Yeah, it's super personal. Lots of hang time. Lots of music. We play some. We play cornhole and cook burgers. It's cool. If you do, we're gonna make you probably get behind the grill for a minute. Just wow.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you so much for hanging out, man. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you guys for the compelling questions, both of you, Sean, Chris. It's a pleasure, man.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen.
We'll chat soon, Stephen. Take care, bud. So that was our conversation with singer-songwriter Stephen Kellogg. Sean, what did you take away?
Chris, I had several takeaways in talking with Stephen. I think the first one was when we asked him how individuals can develop their own style, and he talked about just trying things, just trying on a bunch of different hats. And I think it sounds so simple, but individuals complicate that because they overthink an attempt. They overthink it so much that they neglect to at least try. And they try and think themselves to success instead of act their way towards success. And you only become successful by taking action and failing forward. I don't know anybody that has set out on a goal that did everything correct. Every single step of the way was just literally success after success after success until they hit their final goal. It doesn't happen like that. That's a fantasy. So I think that's very key. Another thing I thought was interesting was when we asked how individuals can determine if they're on the wrong ladder or not, and he said that when individuals are more justifying their work as opposed to being very proud or speaking very proudly of their work, that's a great indicator. And I never heard that before. And in hindsight, I know that I've done that before. I've justified a job when I was explaining it to someone, and I've heard other people do the same. So I think that's a really good indicator. If you're in that position, then you know what? It's time to really do some self-evaluation and figure out what's your next step. You got to take some action, be courageous, maybe move into a different direction. So those were a couple of good points for me. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, man. I think a lot of the reasons why I've connected so much with Stephen Kellogg's work and with who he is because, I feel like I've been on somewhat parallel paths of, trying to figure things out, putting myself out there, being vulnerable, and you're trying to just do the work that I love that I feel like the world needs more of in a way that works for me. And along the way, failing sometimes, succeeding sometimes, and learning through the entire process. So, there's a lot that I could have taken from what we just talked about. I think one of the things that really just stands in my mind is we were kind of close to wrapping up was talking about just the whole idea of what he said was integrity is not necessarily always doing the right thing, but trying to obviously do the right thing. And then if you realize that you're off a little bit, a few degrees to the left or the right, then you can bounce back or find something else to tie back into who you are and what you want to be, and you can always make it right. So I think that's important. I think he made the reference to the song that they made that they felt wasn't who they really were, so they made it right, and once you do, then you can kind of make peace with yourself and move forward in a positive direction. So for me, that kind of hits home on a number of levels. So we hope you enjoyed our conversation with Stephen Kellogg. You can connect with him at Stephen Kellogg, KELLOGG.com, and on social media everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. He's very active and loves connecting with the folks out there. So shoot him a message, let him know what you thought of this conversation. You can find him out on tour all over the country and really the world. And in June, the SK Family Barbecue is coming up where you might or might not be able to find me cooking. And with that, we'll leave you with one final quote that, well, it's not necessarily Stephen Kellogg, but it's from The Office, and people like to attribute to him. It is, it's better to be at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than at the top of one that you don't. On that, we're signing off. Till next time.